Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Namaste Village. Welcome. It's Holy Wednesday in our little world. So remember to take a moment or a few hours just to listen and be with the flow of love. That's our whole environment and part of what we are. So this morning we have Reverend Penny, a Unity minister, visiting minister at Namaste, who will lead us, and then Calico and I will join her. So we welcome you, we bless you, and we love you. Go ahead, Penny.
Okay. Good morning. I think we're still playing with this technology a little bit. Take a breath with me. How about that? Let's do that. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Technology just ain't got nothing on us. God is still greater. That's what we know. So, thank you. I appreciate, once again, being given the opportunity to be with this community. I shared this last time. There's a little tug for me because I love to be in a room. I love to connect. I love to see and feel your spirit. And sometimes that feels a little bifurcated on Zoom. But what I'm knowing about this community and about those folks that are tuned in, right? Yeah, there's no disconnect. Even though, technology may want to make us think there is, there's just no disconnect. So we feel that now. We feel that right now. We know that right now. All right. So I've let the technology thing go, and that's exactly what I was doing in that process. So thank you for walking through that with me. Some of you may know I'm just an old construction dog. I worked in big construction for over 15 years. I built large commercial buildings. And I'm also from a very agrarian place in the world. And it's amazing, isn't it, how those things filter through and open our perception in ways to see the world. I say that the world, even as much as an illusion that it might be, is serving us. So my years in construction taught me this. I am a surveyor of my soul. And I invite you into that. What I can tell you is the first people on the job are the surveyors. They go out there and they kick rocks around. They assess the land. They look at its water capacity. There's all kinds of cool things. And then they send these very immaculate reports out to let you know what you're getting into. And I liken that to my spiritual journey. Because see, when I first started, I don't know about you all, but I started kicking some rocks around. I started just kind of scratching the surface a little bit. And that was just enough to give me a hint of what I was getting into. And just like any construction job, I can tell you, no matter what the surveyors say, there may be a rock under there and it might be really big. And we call that a hard dig. Ever have one of those in your life? A little hard dig? Like the dark night of a soul. That would be a very good example, actually. And what we know Socrates told us is this, that the unexamined life is not worth living. The unexamined life. The surface that we're scratching on in that process, that little surface, I will guarantee you, you will get a ticket on the construction site if you don't have a water truck, because the dust and the mess and the chaos causes a lot of discomfort. And I've noticed that also on my spiritual journey. It can be a little messy. Sometimes the world feels a little messy. Sometimes all the people around me are just messy. Not me, of course. Anybody? But I liken the next step also to my spiritual path. And that is the footings. Because the truth is, the structure of a building is supported as much or more by the footings. We dig into the ground and we pour concrete. And I liken this to my first step actually onto the path. We start to put down some solid places to land when we're going through this process. And we get our footing, right? We just start to get our footing on that spiritual path. And this is what I know about that. Did you know that 1,000-foot building, and I shared this in my spiritual tools class, 1,000-foot building can sway up to 2 feet in 100 miles per hour wind? Wow. Now, think 2 feet, that's about 2 feet, is that right? Right? The building actually sways that amount. And it does that in order to stand. And I notice on my spiritual path, life gets easier when I let room for a little sway. That's what I notice. I think the world is always inviting us into sway. That doesn't mean falling down, because the whole idea of the sway is to prevent that. So I just invite you into this thought by Maximo Lagasse. Spirituality is the art of keeping your internal fire alive and standing in that in such a way that you can receive the greater good. That's what I'm noticing. That's just what I notice, and I believe that all that we have created and that we see in our lives, as I said before, is here to support us in that. So for me, being in construction, it only made sense that I would see the spirituality in concrete. Where are you finding that in your life? What is your life experience right now throwing toward you that gives you the opportunity to remember that sway so you can stand? Concrete sounds a little rigid, doesn't it? But when we consider that it is a living product, there are sidewalks out here in Ajijic, that are probably older than the United States. Think about that. And they've had to move through the years. Our invitation is the deeper we go, just like concrete, the higher we will reach in consciousness, and we have to allow sway. Every foot that building goes up into the air requires it to go that deep in order to stand and sway. So Vicki, what you got to say about that? Do I
Okay,
know?
Reverend Penny, that's a good one. I'm the baker's daughter and grew up and then spent a long time in the restaurant business. So I'm more inclined to taking the ingredients, whatever they are, and making lemonade out of all the lemons.
Make it yours, baby.
But I love the idea of sway, because the sway in everything, no matter what model we use, that's that's when we allow things to be. And then when we sway, we fall back into the natural order because we're not obstructing it. We're not in the way, and we're not blocking anymore. And sway doesn't mean fall down. It just means go with. And certainly any of us have experienced whatever dark night of the soul that has caused us to shed a tear, or to stay up all night with concern, or to shiver in our boots. We have all done that in one way or another, or we wouldn't have found ourselves here. We find ourselves here because there was something we wanted to do or get. It's that simple. And that was what was solid. That didn't have sway to it. We just wanted it. And we stayed vigilant. And it brought us many times to our knees, to a point where either we break or we sway. That's really the whole thing. If we don't sway with not getting what we want, and we decide we are determined, we break. And that's a little bit what we were talking about yesterday. Do we get that gift of desperation? We really just fall apart. But when we sway, we have an opportunity for gentleness. When we stand stiff and we break, that's that surrender point. Where's my surrender little flag? Here we go. And when we, when we're going to stand stiff and we're going to hold to our point of view, we're going to hold, I want that, whatever it is outside of me, we're going to break. And that's not entry into what is everlasting, what is eternal. But I prefer the sway method. I have always preferred the sway method because I don't like having to fall down and fall apart and then have to regroup and have everything come back together. I have had those experiences enough to know that now I prefer sway. So when I'm not getting what I want, instead of going after it and taking a stand, I say, I don't know, maybe I love
I
you.
love you.
Be okay. Let it be. If we look, oh, so this I'll go with this. So I love the idea of your, what did you call them? The footings.
Mhm.
Concrete footings. What are your concrete footings? Because just as you said it, I said, oh, I know. My first concrete footing is God's in charge. Like,
Ah.
that's a footing. Okay. The other thing is God is very happy and he wants me to be too. That's a footing for me. I'll tell you this, when I was a kid and my sisters and I used to talk in the closet about The Secret, this was where I got that footing. That at that time, I don't know, 8 or 9, 10 years old, three of us, my two sisters and I, were in the bathroom talking about the secret. God's the secret. God's the secret. But the biggest thing we got actually were two things. First of all, God's middle name is fun. And it wasn't always, and we knew that to be true. And it wasn't fun always in the house. Sometimes it shook us all up quite a bit. So but we knew it. See how knowing comes when you just kind of sway and go with it. So God is fun. That was one of the footings. And the other footing is we were here to love. And we were here to love and not pay attention to anything except the God in everyone. When someone scared us, don't worry about them. Look at the God in them. That's how we would call it. And then the third footing that we had was that we were here to bring heaven on earth. We were
Mhm.
here to bring happiness and a party. Those have been my footings. And my life has not always looked like a party. There have some very obstructions, some upsetting things like all of us, because we got here looking for the in time party instead of the out of time party. And when we sway, we let go of the idea of what that out of time party is supposed to look like. And we get brought back in the in time party, we get brought back in to the out of time party that's constantly going on, constantly. And all we're asked to do is trust the footings, trust that that building's not going to fall down and collapse, that we're going to sway. The foundation and those footings are God is in charge. God's middle name is fun. And all we have to do is see the God in everyone because that's all there is. And before we know it, we sway back to center and we slip into this natural centering of peace. That's the kind of peace that comes from not necessarily looking at what looks peaceful out here, but finally settling into what is peaceful in here. And that's what we do, especially today. Today's Holy Silent Wednesday, right? Today's a day where we may sway a little bit with whatever seems to be external in our lives, but we sway until we can listen to the natural order of God being in charge. Because if, like the other night, this is another example. I was taking care of my grandchildren, and their parents were out till very late. And my grandson was fine, and then all of a sudden he starts crying. I want my mother. I want my father. And he's really, I mean, inconsolable. I said, "Oh, gee, Tommy, yeah, I guess you have to cry. Let's feel like your feelings together." So we're feeling his feeling. And I said to him, Tommy, this is so good that you're feeling your feelings. I said, because even though you're blue and you're sad and you're crying like crazy, underneath sad is happy. You're really happy, but you don't know it right now. And he said, and he stopped crying just for a second. And he said, Tutu, you mean I'm really happy and I don't know? I said, yeah, but that's okay. Go ahead and cry because right now you need to let those tears out. And he did. He went right back to being unconsolable. And I just was with him and kind of quiet and didn't try and say, you gotta, it's okay, you're a big boy now. None of that. Let's just, I'll just hang out with you and sway a little bit. And before I knew it, in a few minutes, he just went to sleep, quiet as a baby. And that's what we do for ourselves, right? It's like it may be happy in the inner world, but I'm swaying because my outer world scares the daylights out of me, whatever it might be. So let yourself cry a little bit, let the tears come. And just the way he said, but underneath, I'm really happy. I don't know how that is, but I am. And we find ourselves just resting a moment. And Holy Wednesday is a day just to pay attention to those foundings, those footings, and find that center where God is in charge. And God's middle name is fun. And He wants us to know it and be happy the way He is. That joy without opposite really is our natural state. And when we stop swaying and we fall into center, into peace, we just fill up. It's really, for me, it's like champagne bubbles. They just bubble up and they just are naturally what we are because we're not blocking it anymore by trying to reach something out there. Soon as we go out there, we get off balance. We lose our footings. As soon as we let ourselves sway and we come center, we get found and we get found into happiness. And the best way I know is let it all be. Let it all be. Go with the flow. Tune into the flow. If the flow says cry, cry. Says take to your bed, take to your bed. Don't make it a big deal. Just go with it. And it will pass. Because what isn't eternal will always pass if we don't resist it or we don't engage it. When we resist it or engage it, we perpetuate it. When we let it be and let it flow, we fall into what is eternal, our natural state of joy and peace and happiness. So that's my 2 cents, Reverend Penny.
Ah,
Have a good time.
you. And Vicki, just to let you know, if I were on a construction site with your quick understanding of footings, I would hire you. And I
I
also
jumped in.
I have an acronym for God's middle name, FUN, Fully Unleash Now. I am. I'm something, a lot of things I am full of. So I think, is Caligo going to join us today? There she is. Hello, dear one.
I was, I was just thinking of the former career I was in this lifetime was a chiropractor. And one of the things, not so much the new chiropractors, but this is way back in the dark ages of chiropractic. They said, we don't do anything. We allow innate to take care of it. And innate is God. Just trust God. It's another one of those things that, and I used to tell people, look at where your fears are. This is before I really got into mind training. I was going to say, just look to where your fears are and then take those to God, because that is healing. That's a Course in Miracles before I even read A Course in Miracles. And it's like, and that's what we called in chiropractic innate. Let innate take over. And innate isn't necessarily going to fix it, but it's going to release you from fearing whatever you're seeing. And innate is a power all unto its own. And I say innate is trusting God. And God isn't about fixing things. God is about releasing us from our fear of anything. And then once we're fearless, it ceases to be a problem no matter what's going on. And Vicki, I know you've talked about your closet so many times with your sisters. And I was sitting when you were talking about it, I was going, every time you mention it, I go, oh God, I wish I had that kind of a closet. I'd climb in my closet when I was fearful, but it's like I didn't have any sisters supporting, let's talk about God. And it's like, and I thought, I don't need to go back and say, I wish I had a closet. I can join you in that closet now. And I choose to, just like that party you held the other day, I had a blast. And I thank you so much for throwing it because I was there and just celebrating, had no idea who was winning. It didn't matter. I just had fun being in the closet with you, Vicki. And talking about God. So get into your closet with Vicki and let's just talk about God. Trust God. Just trust God. Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Calico. So I'm going to turn it over, I believe, now to the master of music, Scott. Thank you, Scott, for being with us to do this.
Some of our morning lessons are rather abstract, but today's was very concrete.
See that one going.
Flexibility in every way. Flexibility. Let's learn to sway. God created us so tall, and when we learn to sway, we don't need to fall. That's why you and I are swaying all day long. All right, let's switch now. Time to sway, and then we'll be stronger. It's okay to bend with the wind. If we're learning to flow, it's time to let go of the anchor that keeps you stiff. God is fun, so let's have a ship that goes with the current all day long. Flexible is really strong. So if you want to play, it's time just to sway. Here at Namaste and wherever your feet are planted in the sand, time to know there's a plan that allows us to bend. Swaying is our friend. It's innate, it's great. It does all the work for us, and it's time for us to bend, sway, and trust.
What's that? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for making this so easy, because you can feel the depth of the footings, the height of the consciousness, and the sway of the love as we come together. Yeah, so thank you for that. I think this is where, do I do the amen now? So will you join me, please? Amen, amen, amen.
Amen. Canto.